Hello everyone and welcome again to today's Home Games. I'm very delighted to be joined by Richard Allum. Hi Rich, how are you?
Hello, this is all a bit weird being on this side of things, but I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries, really happy to have you, and I'm very happy not to be the one answering questions but asking them because I'm much more comfortable with that myself too. So cool. So a couple of things to run through with everyone before we kind of get into the main chat stuff. So I think a few people have joined us before on these things, and I can also see that there's quite a lot of the paraplanning clan who are out in force supporting Rich. So they all know how this kind of crowdcast thing works. But just for anyone else who is a newbie, this is how you engage with us. So there's the chat down the side where you can kind of put your comments and your questions for Richard there. And then there's also an ask a question button beneath the screen, and that will kind of flash me up a pop-up if you really want your question to be asked. So that's all of that kind of thing. The only other thing that I have to tell you is there's a little technical link which may or may not help you if you are experiencing any kind of technical difficulties. So I'll just pop that in the chat. I'm not very good at multitasking, so Richard's probably much more smoother at this than I am. But there you go. And I think that's it in terms of housekeeping. Have I missed anything, Rich? You're a pro at this.
No,
you tell me.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Thanks. Cool. All right. So we'll get started then. So I guess the natural starting point with this is I think a lot of people on here know you already, but it'd be good to kind of understand a little bit more about your outsourced paraplanning business, which is called, helpfully, the Paraplanners. So the name is on the tin. And maybe you could kind of talk us through why you decided to launch it and also why you decided to launch it when you did. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So it goes back a long way because I'm quite old now. So back in 2002 was when I set the business up. It was first called Advisor Assist back in those days. And I'd got the idea from looking in the Australian market. I'd lived there for a while, a few years before, and kind of kept watching things and saw that paraplanning was really booming over there. And outsourced paraplanning in particular was the default model. And so, there's no new ideas, just good recycled ones. So I kind of borrowed that idea. And in 2002, set up the business. We were the first outsourced firm in the UK, closely followed by Damien at Time Bank later that year. And we're both still here, going strong, which is good. And it was just after 9/11 when the Russian markets were blowing up. And so it wasn't the best time, I think, but got through the first year, which is the hardest year for anybody. And it kind of took off from there. It was slow for the first few years, I've got to say, because at that time, if you said I'm a paraplanner, people were like, para what? So it wasn't really a commonly sort of known term. There were paraplanners around, obviously. In fact, the first one I could ever find was Mike Morrison, sadly missed these days, who was a paraplanner back from 1980 something. That's the earliest recorded known paraplanner I know of. And then we kind of built from there. And then in 2008, rebranded as Paraplan Plus, which is a bit of a mouthful with hindsight. And then in 2012, we kind of thought, do a bit of a rebrand. And no one had taken the name The Paraplanners, unbelievably. So it seemed a bit of an obvious one, really. Yeah, so we bought everything, and the domains, the whole lot. And so The Paraplanners is what it was from 2012. And we're still here now. Deliberately kept very small. There's 5 of us in the team. We work with about 41 firms at the moment. Most of those are smaller, owner-managed, directly authorized firms, sort of 1 to 5 advisors. And our average relationship with those is over 7 years. And we've still got 2 clients that have been with us for 19 years now, since day one, still going strong.
Do they get a carriage clock when they get to 20 or something?
Well, they might get a special bar of chocolate if they're lucky.
Okay, no, that's probably more in keeping. I can see Matthew, a mystery Matthew without a surname, has talked about the paraplanning sessions you did with Winterthur back in the day and how brilliant they were. So that's
nice. That was a long time ago, Matthew. Good memory. But yeah, they were great fun. Enjoyed those.
So that's good. So so as you say, you've kind of been there and done it and been in the game kind of a while and seen the kind of market change and evolve as your business has grown and stuff. So, and kind of one of the things that I've kind of noticed is the paraplanning community has kind of risen in prominence, outsourced paraplanning also, and I guess you've had a lot to do with both of those things. But what do you think has been kind of driving that kind of rise of outsourced paraplanning, if I'm talking in like headline terms, or what's kind of behind that kind of increase in interest and popularity and demand, I guess, for those services?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at paraplanning as a whole, first of all, it seems to be, every 3 or 4 months there's a headline article, the rise of the paraplanner. And that's been going on for about 10 years. It's not new. We've gone beyond that now. Paraplanning is an established, recognized part of the advice profession, and rightly so. Outsourced paraplanning has grown really quite fast in the last 5 years in particular, definitely since RDR. It had been growing reasonably steadily in the years up to that. I mean, back in the olden days when it was just me and Damien, really, there wasn't really much around. But now we're seeing sort of new firms pop up all over the place, which is great. And I think it does come down to supply and demand, first and foremost. There's a big demand for paraplanners out there. No one knows how many paraplanners there are actually, because there isn't a register like there are for advisors. And one of the big frustrations in the paraplanning community is that anybody can call themselves a paraplanner. You could rock up tomorrow and say, "Hey, I'm a paraplanner today." You might not last very long, but you could call yourself a paraplanner. But no one knows. And back when I used to be on the board of the IFP, about 10% of the community were paraplanners. So I think that's pretty consistent now. So there's about 3,500 paraplanners out there. But since RDR particularly, firms have realized when they want to deliver their service proposition, the paraplanner can be the engine, the real driving force behind that. And you tend to find that advisors and financial planners are brilliant, in front of clients on the relationship management and building side of things. But they may not be so strong or so interested in the technical side of things and the analysis and the strategy and the reporting, which all of us paraplanners really love. So they can give that side of the business to the paraplanners and focus on what they're good at. So demand has gone up and supply hasn't really gone anywhere. And that's the problem. So back in the olden days, people used to go and get a job from school or college or uni at a life company, get some really good training, and then sort of see the other side and leave and go and work for an IFA, probably as an administrator or paraplanner. So there was a good supply that way. Of course, that supply chain is pretty much gone these days. So, new paraplanners coming into the industry, that's a real issue. So if people can't employ one, they look to outsource. So demand goes up for the outsourced world. And at the same time, a lot of paraplanners look at what we do on the outsource side and think, well, that looks really good. They kind of choose when they work, choose who they work with, could possibly earn a bit more money, all of which can be true. What many don't realize straight away is they're swapping one job for 2 jobs. So they're a paraplanner at the moment. They've got to be a paraplanner when they set their own firm up, but then they've got to do the accounting, the marketing, the legals, everything else that goes with running a business. And that can be quite a culture shock sometimes. So some don't stick with it and decide to go back, but there's plenty that do survive, which is great. So there's lots of choice for advisors out there, which is the good news. Outsourcing isn't right for everyone, can be right for many. And certainly my firm and other firms aren't right for everybody as well. So it's great to have choice. So it's great seeing so many more coming into this side of the business.
Yeah. And has your kind of process and your way of working with planners changed over time, would you say?
It's always evolving. I think we've made all the mistakes you can ever make in the last 19 years, and we've learned from them all, I'd like to think. But we're constantly trying to improve things and tweak around the edges to make things a bit better and a bit smoother. But the nature of the relationship has changed a bit for us by choice, because back when you start out, you'll take anybody. If they're prepared to work with you and send you some money, then come on in. So lesson I certainly learned back then was, don't price yourself down just to start off with, because it's very hard to go up. Work out what you need to do as a business and set your standards at a certain level. We're very fortunate now, being as established as well, that we can choose who we work with, which is a really nice position to be in. When I set up my own business, I wanted to actually choose who to work with and who our clients would be. So I look forward to coming to work. So we're really lucky being like that. So we've changed the way that we actually talk to potential new clients. to make sure we're a good fit for them, but they're a good fit for us as well. That's really important. I don't want my team, not looking forward to getting, work from a particular client at any point in time. So we pretty much worked that one out quite nicely. And our systems and processes are always evolving, as technology changes. But we do work really well when it's an ongoing relationship. That's how we work with our clients. So that's why we've got an average of 7 years with our clients, because they see us as being an integral part of their team. And that's the relationship we look for. So we've changed the way we look for clients and a little bit how we work with them.
Yeah, okay. I can see the question kind of box like pinging already, so I'll take one or two now. I can see that Stuart had already submitted a question. So Stuart, if you're watching, I think you are on the event. I am going to ask your question, but I'm going to ask it later. But Andy asks about kind of the mix of how much paraplanning you do yourself, and suggest that maybe you don't get very much time to do that. So are you still kind of mucking in? And when was the last time you did any paraplanning? Which I'm asking in quite an aggressive way, but I don't think he means that way.
No, it doesn't. And it's not aggressive at all. No, it's a good question. I mean, we're still a micro business. So that does mean that we've all got to muck in and do a bit of everything. And we do. We've got a great team here that, no one's above doing anything. But I do have the responsibility for making the business tick. Also, so Claire and our team is responsible for that as well. But then I've got the Paraplanners Assembly and other little bits as well. So that there's quite a few things going on. But I last did some paraplanning this morning, actually, just before this one. I was working reports for one of our clients. So I do still get involved in paraplanning, every week. I don't do as much as I would like to do. And I'm trying to work on that to actually do a bit more, because I still really enjoy it. I like nothing more than getting a really nice spreadsheet running and doing some analysis that way. So I reckon probably at the moment about a third of my time is spent doing paraplanning. I'd like to boost it up a bit if I can.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. So Nick Lincoln has asked a question, and I'm going to ask it verbatim because I wouldn't want to paraphrase Nick Lincoln. So he asks, since starting in 2002, products have, with the rise of platforms, become far more homogenous, no more capital units, 125% allocations, etc. How has this altered the work you do for advisors, given that initially a lot of it must have been Synaptic's best product of the week type stuff?
Yeah. Good. And hello to Nick. Nick and I used to be broker consultants at the same business many, many years ago. And he'll remember back in those days, the marketing team used to give us a list of filters to apply in Synaptics to get our particular product set to come out on top. And any broker consultants out there will know what I'm talking about on that one. So yeah, I mean, back when we started, we used Synaptics an awful lot, for filtering products. And you were pretty much starting with a blank sheet of paper with each case that came across our desks. Things have changed a lot since then. And as Nick says, most of the clients we work with, they have platform partners in place. They have a centralized investment proposition in place. So that's at a business level. And we've often helped them get there, first of all. So that's a different thing we do than we did many, many years ago. But it's still down to suitability. There's no shoehorning going on around here. And each case is looked at in its own merits. Most firms do have a preferred strategy and segmentation in place that sort of streamlines that process. So we focus quite a lot more now on sort of strategy planning, sort of financial planning, and cash flows, those kind of things. So it's not just about picking the bond with the highest allocation rate with the top Neil Woodford fund of the time, as it used to be. So it's a bit different these days.
We're glad to hear that. Cool, that's fine. And then I think actually we have had a question, from Matthew, again, just around that point about suitability. So without turning over our whole session onto suitability letter templates, he asked whether you use them, and if so, are these your own work or do you use an off-the-shelf system?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't use something like Genova or ATEB, which in my opinion are the two best ones out there. So if you're looking for those, go and have a look at them. I know plenty of people do. We've built our own report system, which originally was based around Microsoft Office. Now it's based on Google. So we've got our own bit of software that plugs into that. And we've got a library of standard text that we use. But I am never happier when I'm starting with a blank screen. I like writing free text. I find it better that way. It's more personal that way. So the trick of good paraplanning is actually embedding the personalization, so the client can pick up the report and see themselves inside there and think, this person really understands me, knows where I am now, knows where I'm going, what I'm scared about, and has come up with a solution. But you don't need to write how FAD works every time. You should be able to have that standard. You don't need to write about Transact, every single time. It should be standard. So we try and blend the two. So we've got our own system. We've got our own library of text that we use and we update ourselves.
Okay, great. And then the other question I had was from Richard Grimsdale. So hi, Richard. And he asked, he kind of talks about this whole thing about choosing who you work for, which is a really nice place to be. But he asked whether there have been any firms that you've stopped working with. Now, you don't have to name them, and you don't have to name and shame, but how do you kind of broach those conversations if it is a relationship that isn't working anymore for either side?
Yes, we have stopped working with firms. Firms have stopped working with us either because they've grown their own paraplanning team, or they've merged or been bought out by somebody and that there's resources there. And we've elegantly disengaged with some clients in the past.
Conscious uncoupling?
It's a bit like that. Yeah, it's a bit like that. Simply because it wasn't working. And that could be for two reasons. Either because what we did and how much we charge, and we're certainly at the top end of fees in outsourced paraplanning, wasn't really what they needed. They could go somewhere else, and I'm more than happy to point them in another direction. Say, go and speak to these people. They're a better fit for you than we are. It's going to be exactly what you need. It's going to cost you less money. Or because the relationship just doesn't work. Sometimes you only learn about sort of personality clashes when you've started to work with somebody for a while, or we just haven't enjoyed the way things have been going. We've only had one situation where we've looked at what a firm's doing and thought we don't want to be associated with that in any way, shape or form, and just ended the contract straight away. That's only happened once in 19 years, which is good. So yes, we have parted company with a few people over the years.
Yeah, I guess like in most things, like-minded firms will attract like-minded firms. So it should kind of surface quite quickly if actually you're not working together that well or whatever. But yeah, it's probably a tough conversation to have in the rare instances that you have to have it. Yeah,
it's not one I look forward to. But, in the vast majority of times I've had that conversation, it's worked out a better outcome for everybody involved.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So a lot of people are looking to tap up your knowledge just now. So Howard asks about whether your service includes lifetime cash flow planning, and if so, what is your system?
Yes, it certainly can do. I'm a big fan of cash flow planning. In fact, we built our own cash flow planning tool a few years ago because we couldn't find what we wanted in the marketplace. So we built our own, which about 200 firms are still using, which is great.
Which is called, this is where you plug it.
So it's called MoneyScope. Other cash flow tools are out there. We do use that one when it's really simple stuff. It depends on whether our advisor clients are using a system themselves or not. I'm a great believer that cash flow planning works best when it's done live and dynamic with the clients, sitting down with the client and having a base plan built. And if you've got it on a piece of paper with a nice pretty chart there, and the client says, but what if I retire 3 years early? You might get your pencil out and try and draw another line on that, but it doesn't really have the same impact. So doing it live, with a big screen with the client, that's how I think it works best. It's difficult to outsource that. We've tried over the years. It's very difficult to outsource that. So our clients would either maybe do the cash flows themselves. We go back and say, can you just tweak the strategy to do it this way? Or clients that don't have cash flow planning tools, then we'll do them for them. We use and have licenses with obviously MoneyScope. We've got them with Xplan. We've got them with CashCalc. A couple of others, can't remember now. So most of the systems we either use ourselves or work with our advisor clients on.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So I wanted to change tack now and talk about Paraplanners Assembly, actually. So, and just your kind of whole experience of that in terms of not running a community, that's not fair to say, but kind of keeping the community alive during lockdown and how you found that. And I guess in terms of lessons learned, really, that whole kind of online event piece, because I think everybody's got used to online events and we're happy to have them here, and that's all cool. But yeah, there is something missing there in terms of the real human element of live events versus this idea that more people can come to an online event that wouldn't ordinarily. So that was quite an action-packed question, but what kind of would you say around, I guess, the kind of community and lockdown piece, and then also the whole event side of things as well?
Yeah, I mean, the assembly is all about the community. So, and it wouldn't happen without a growing number of volunteers who give their time and their thought process to it. So it's community-based to start off with. And we've been doing online stuff anyway for a few years by the time lockdown hit. In fact, first month of lockdown, we were spending quite a bit of time helping advisors and other firms actually work out how to do stuff online, which is great. We could kind of share our experience around that one. But we do a lot of sort of interaction with the community. We do regular surveys, and they come to us saying we'd like this. And all the content we do is because some people in the community have asked for it. And at the start of lockdown, we said, well, what support can we give you lot out there? And amongst other things, they came back and said, we'd like the chance to still kind of socialize because we don't go in the office anymore. We don't go to events anymore. And we were really lucky that we had 3 paraplanner volunteers, which was Jackie Manning, Claire Lindsay and Caroline Stewart, said, look, we'll organise kind of a coffee morning virtual thing, which they did the first one, and we had a huge number of people piling into that one, and they've been doing them ever since March last year. They kind of happen a bit irregularly now. They're kind of relatively small, but it's a great space for people to come together and chat about anything, literally anything. So that happened. They're still going, which is good. So that's kind of the informal bit. We did a lot more events online. I think last year was the first year we actually had a decent plan for the whole content in January. Of course, we ripped it up in March because that all went out the window. But we ended up doing about 30-something online events last year compared to a planned 12. So big increase in that, only because of the demand we had. So we find that with a mixture of kind of these kind of things where the community can join in the chat room, we do more structured events, and with our online forum, there's a nice mixture there for people to get involved. And we've also seen lots of little kind of sort of separate groups spring up, either local paraplanners or specialist paraplanners, whether they want to set up a WhatsApp group or whatever it may be. We've helped to facilitate that as well. So the community is still there, still very lively and active. And we'd love to get back out and start meeting people again, mainly because at our events, the first thing on the planning agenda is always get great food. So we're missing that side of things. But big thing we've learned over lockdown by having to go online for everything is that we've been able to reach people that couldn't come to events that we were doing in person. Either because to get there would have been a day traveling, a day for the event, and a day back again. That's 3 days, out of the office, which many people would struggle to get permission for. But also, there's a significant number of people that have got accessibility issues, that just can't get to. In our case, some teepees in the middle of the field might not be the easiest thing to get to at one of our events for some people. So we've had a lot of new people come to some of our more sort of set piece events that have been in touch saying, I've always wanted to come to one of these since 2013, but I just can't get there. It was great to be involved and see what it's like and get sort of interactive with it. So we haven't worked out how to actually do this now, because we'd like to get the in-person stuff, but we love the fact that online gives access to more people. How do you kind of blend the two and get the best of both worlds? And I don't know the answer to that one yet. We're still thinking about it. We've got no plans to go back to in-person events just yet. So we're still working on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of in that kind of headspace where they're like, well, we can see that online worked. That's good. There's still an appetite to get back to live and in person. If only for the coffees and food, but also for the genuine human contact. And then this whole thing of, the hybrid event and what's live and what's kind of on demand, and making sure that everybody can access it and still get a kind of high quality of output, whether they attend in person or not. I think that's the kind of thing that hopefully cleverer people than me will work out in the next 6 months by the time we come to our next.
Let's hope so.
Cool. So I think your next sort of big set piece event is November, is that right?
September's the first one. That's our national event.
Okay, cool.
Which we're about to launch in a couple of weeks' time. So watch this space. And then yes, we've got another one which we haven't launched yet, but it's happening in November as well.
Fine. Okay, cool. So I think now feels like a opportune time to ask Stuart Holbrook's question. So he asks, very pertinently, is it possible for HomeGames and Assembly to never clash? So completely take the point on that, and we've both tried to kind of have a little bit of a play with this Wednesday lunchtime slot, but I know that before I got here that you and Mr. Paulson kind of worked quite closely around trying to coordinate that whole thing, even if they were kind of happening at the same time. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, we've gone with kind of the 1 o'clock, normally the last Wednesday of every month, but with the odd Wednesday in between as well, mainly because it's all volunteers from the paraplanning community, and that's just worked well for them. So we need to kind of create the easiest way in for them to do these kind of things. I know when HomeGames first started, when it was kept to half an hour, Mark used to sort of point people in our direction. We'd always see about 2 minutes past one, a massive influx of people coming over from HomeGames, which was really good. But the good news is that, you know, you record yours and we record ours, so people can watch them on replay afterwards. So there's probably always going to be a little bit of a crossover there. Maybe we'll do a nice segue one day, like a kind of 70s DJ on the radio or something.
We go live too.
Yeah, crossing over to our reporter in Paraplanner land. But that's why we go with the 1 o'clock. So it gives us the hour, and a lot of paraplanners use their lunch hour to kind of join in on that.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we'll try and work on that kind of smooth segue for future. I'll get my smooth radio voice on or something. So cool. So on the paraplanning side of things and due diligence, I kind of wanted to talk to you a bit about that, just in terms of what you would say paraplanners' role in due diligence is, and again, I guess as I asked before, whether you feel that has changed over time at all.
Yes, it's definitely changed over time. I mean, I was around when the first platform or sort of mainstream platform was launched in the UK, which was Transact back in 2001, I think. And it was a revelation. You know, people sort of flocked to it and started using it a lot. And then I think the next biggest one was Stand Alive launched after that one. And a lot of people just kind of started using platforms, and this kind of concept of due diligence wasn't really commonly sort of heard of or used. People just thought, well, they're good, you know, pricing's okay, service is great, I'll use them. And of course, over time, as you know, the market expands and things change and regulators get involved in these kind of things, people started to focus more on due diligence, quite rightly so. And it tends to be done at a firm level rather than doing the whole process for an individual product selection or platform selection for each client. So yeah, it's become an important part of an advice firm to make sure that they've actually, you know, they understand what it is they're recommending to their clients, and they've looked at things other than just the fund selection and the charges. And this falls, you know, right into paraplanners' sort of sweet spot, really, because we love going out and doing analysis and research and asking challenging questions and collating stuff and doing comparisons. So that's brilliant. We like doing that. And it's, you know, often been a very manual process behind it. So, you know, you'd have to send out questionnaires, requests for information, and it could take quite a long time if you're lucky to get anything back again. But, you know, persistence pays on this one. And it's changed in recent years where, you know, there's resources available, like yours, for example, and sort of compliance people have kind of focused on it a bit more, and it's become an important part of what advisors do. And we've had Prod come along as well, which is kind of focused on that as well. So yeah, it's grown in prominence in recent years, and is an integral part of what all advice firms are doing. And certainly paraplanners tend to be there to do the job for them.
Yeah, I can see Sam commenting there about not picking a platform based on the quality of the pen and mug that they get.
Well, Sam knows that's really what it's about. We've just got to do a lot of due diligence to back it up.
There's the official answer, and then there's the real answer. Yeah. And then, so what about the whole aspect of prod in this? Because prod is something that kind of came along and people sort of thought, oh yeah, that's another thing that I have to comply with. And then there were a few kinds of sort of anecdotal studies that sort of suggested some people still weren't applying it to their process, or maybe didn't think it applied to them because they dealt with a subset of the market. So what would your report card be on prod and due diligence, and whether that's kind of fully embedded as it should be?
Yeah, I mean, prod has been a rule now, hasn't it, for 2 or 3 years? I forgot when it actually came in now, but it's a rule. So everybody should have been doing it from day one when it came in. And I think it's probably fair to say that most people didn't do it to the letter. The first year, maybe the second year, they might still be catching up with a few people now. And I've often seen a lot around it's just kind of, another process, or of course I'm doing the right thing for my clients, or I only ever deal with people that are 60 coming on a Tuesday and they're going to be suitable for this particular platform investment process. It's not that, and certainly speaking with the clients that we work with, it's been embedded in what they do anyway. They just haven't called it prod. What they're trying to do is find the most suitable outcome, great outcome for their clients based on what their objectives are, where they are now, and where they want to get to. That's what certainly all the firms that we work with do all the time. What probably was missing was something formalizing that. So having, a segmentation exercise, something that they could show anybody that came in the office, if anybody can come in an office again, but that they could produce a document or something tangible saying, right, here's how we see our clients now and our clients in the future, and here's what we determine will be, great outcomes for our clients. And then you've got the due diligence behind that to select the platforms or the investment providers or whatever it may be that goes inside that. So it's just formalizing that process. And I do see people saying, well, we just sort of self-select a certain type of clients, so they're all going to get the same thing, or they're all at this stage in their financial life, which is fine. But any good prod segmentation process should have an exceptions policy in there. And not every client is always going to fit, what your kind of default model is. So exceptions policies are really important to have, and that's possibly the most important part of any prod work I get involved in. So it's much better than it was. I think most firms were doing it anyway without calling it prod, but it's just been a case of formalizing it, pulling it together, so that if an advisor disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, when their locum walked in the next day, they could actually pick something and say, right, okay, now I understand now why all these people are here and why these new people are going to go there as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that kind of thing, like with the running of the business generally, is probably in an owner manager's head and perhaps not captured in the way that a FCA audit trail would expect it to be potentially. Right, so I'm going to stop to just talk about the chat, because we've had some lovely comments about collaboration between client and planner, and the plan being a living thing that needs to be allowed to grow. And then we've also had some chat about corporate umbrellas and who has what. So,
corporate umbrella chat there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a eclectic one. And there's also some questions that have come in as well. So I am going to get to those, but I just wanted to ask one or two of my own first, which is my prerogative. So I wanted to ask you about what's going on with professional bodies. So obviously they've been in the news a lot just now with the deregistering the PFS and the vote on that we saw. We've also kind of prior to that had the conversation around certificates, and that them being kind of under par and not the kind of lovely calligraphy style product that people have wanted in the past, and just this kind of general, not even undertone, but very explicit overtone about, not being valued in the context of with the PFS CII and that insurance umbrella. But then on the other side of things, we've got the kind of, I guess, historic, but kind of still quite keenly felt thing around what was the IFP and what that has become. And I know that you were a kind of very active player when it was the IFP. So there's kind of a lot kind of going on, but I just wanted to sort of really hear your views on where we're at with the professional bodies and what you think needs to happen next, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's a big topic, isn't it? And of course, these are my personal views, and other views are available. But I think that could do better is what I'd say. I mean, being a paraplanner, and although we run our business as if we were regulated, we're not. So we don't need an SPS, for example. But all the advisors out there, there's a bit of a monopoly situation. They've got to be a member of some body to get an SPS, which is, could create sort of lazy thinking, let's say, in some cases. But I think all the stuff going on with the PFS, why? What are you doing? I mean, it's great to see that the PFS board, who largely comprised members of the financial planning community, have voted against this, which is good. I'm really pleased to see that. Although, of course, the CI can just sort of wave their magic wand and say, oh, we don't care, we're doing it anyway. Let's hope they don't. So I think that's not very good. And I think I mean, I'm a member of a professional body, so I can do exams, and you've got to be, which is a bit frustrating as well. One of my big frustrations is that, I've achieved certain levels of qualification and certain badges that I can wave around if I want to, as long as I'm prepared to keep paying money for it. Which is quite frustrating as well. I think that, I was on the board of the IFP, quite a few years ago. I was asked to go on there to be the first paraplanner, and the IFP did wonderful stuff for paraplanners, really pushed things forward, and had a great community of people, of like-minded people that were prepared to come together, share views, exchange views, help each other get better so they could all help their clients. And I was against the merger that happened with CISI, but it went ahead anyway. And I think they lost the community. That's my personal view around that one. I think the financial planning community just kind of dissipated then. A plus side around that is that being a resourceful bunch like we are, where people miss that community, they started doing things for themselves. So we started to see things like, we did with the Paraplanners Assembly. You've got things like, the Back to Why events. You've got the Science of Retirement conferences going on. There's lots of examples where people in the community thought, I don't need a professional body to do this. We're going to do it ourselves. We'll come together and do it. And that's brilliant. So there's such a range of development events out there and alternative community events out there, which I think is a really good thing. But I don't think the professional bodies are covering themselves in glory at the moment. Let's put it that way. How they fix that, I'm not entirely sure. I think, trying to stay in touch with the community and listen to what people really want and try and react to that in a positive way is a good starting point, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you have much faith in them being able to kind of turn things around and being, I guess, more representative of the planning and paraplanning communities? Or do you think now that with these kind of different groups that have sprung up, that's where people will go now?
I mean, they've still got a place. They've got to have a place because of, qualifications, SPS and those kind of things. But they've got, several people to please. They've got sort of financial, relationships to please. They've got community relationships to please. So it's difficult. I don't, I wouldn't want to do it myself, a professional body. But I think, and some of them have gone out and started to talk to some of these sort of do-it-yourself development groups out there, which is good. But I think they need to look at those and see, why are people really embracing these? What is it about these things that's out there? And it generally is people coming together with no agenda, with nothing being pushed down their throats, just saying, we want to get better at what we do. We want to hear from other people. That's what people really liked. And I know back in the old days with the IFP, that was what the community was all about. And it did very well from a community point of view. Didn't do too well on some other things, but it did really well from that point of view. And that is, in my experience, missing to a degree with what professional bodies do these days.
Yeah, I think Sam's kind of echoed that with sort of saying the CI is just in danger of kind of just becoming an exam board and that's it, which I guess would be a shame in the sense that, you think about, the PFS festival and, how big that was and, the IFP and what that used to be. I think capturing and bottling some of that spirit would be good and would be helpful to everybody, really, and people would feel like they were getting value maybe. But you're being very diplomatic and not saying anything, so I won't try and dry you on that anymore. Right, so we've got some questions that I will try and get through before our time is up. So Andy has come back on again to ask, just to kind of turn the conversation more around, I guess, the paraplanning side of things. But he asked, how much influence would you say you have over recommendations?
It varies. I mean, some of our clients have already decided what the strategy is going to be, and we just kind of put everything together and make it happen. Other clients come to us saying, here's the client, here's their objectives, go away and find the best solution. And they go with what we come up with, which is great. But one thing we do with every single case that we see, and this is what most of our clients really value working with us, is that we give it that sense check, that second opinion. So it doesn't matter, what they present to us. If it doesn't make sense to us, or we don't think there's a better way of doing it, what we're going to say. And something I say to any new client of ours, if you're not comfortable with one of my team picking up the phone and telling you you're wrong, there's a better way, then don't come and work with us. We're not trying to score points. We're trying to make sure we work together as partners to get the best outcome for the client. So we do have quite a high level of involvement in what is actually recommended for the clients.
Yeah, and is that a challenge to be necessarily frank, I guess, because you need to kind of provide that challenge, but obviously people do things the way they want to do them because they think that's the best way. So yeah, that can be quite requiring, I guess, levels of diplomacy maybe.
Yeah, we have diplomats, of course, and all good paraplanners are great communicators, whether it's in the written form or speaking form. That's what we do. Some of our clients, just say if I've just made a howler, pick up the phone and tell me. They want to know that. With other clients, you have to maybe sort of gently cover the subject, but it's with the same objective in mind. It's to make sure, one of our roles as a paraplanner is a safety net for our advisors, because they can't know everything and they can't be up to speed with everything. So we're here as a kind of safety net to make sure that they haven't missed something. So that's an important part of what we do. But we survey our clients quite regularly, and they really value this. They like the fact that we are that one stage removed. We don't know the end clients personally, so we get the facts presented to us. If that doesn't stack up for a good recommendation, we're going to say so.
Okay, that makes sense. I just have to acknowledge the comment about the money marketing umbrella, because I edited money marketing and I never got a money marketing umbrella, so I've obviously missed out there. So obviously we've focused a lot on outsourced paraplanning because that's your remit and that's the game you're in. But Andy asked about the whole in-house versus outsourcing question. So he asked what you think is the big benefit in firms outsourcing as opposed to employing their own paraplanners.
Okay, well, I don't want to do a kind of big sales pitch for the whole outsourced industry here because it's not right for everybody. That's the first thing.
And also because we haven't got the right of reply for the in-house paraplanner as
exactly.
well.
And in-house paraplanners are the majority of the community and do a fantastic job. And where they have an advantage over us lot on the outsourced side is they are intrinsically embedded in the firm, and they know the clients, and they only deal with one service proposition, one investment proposition every day. So they know it inside out, whereas we have to deal with 40 odd different versions of these. But what our clients tell us is that, if you're a small financial planning or financial advice firm, even if you can afford to go and hire a good paraplanner, trying to find one and tempt them away is really hard at the moment. So if you go, let's say, to my firm, you come and outsource, you instantly plug in a team of 5 highly qualified, highly experienced paraplanners. So you've boosted your capacity, many times over, and you've got access to that expertise and a pool of expertise that you wouldn't necessarily have just by employing one person. So that's the main benefit. I often hear people talk about outsourced paraplanning in the terms of, what crap can you get off your desk and give to me? And I hate that. It's not that. It's not about what rubbish can we take away from you. It's what can we bring to what you're doing. So a good paraplanning firm will actually add to the service that the advisor is delivering, I'll add to their process and make things more efficient and more robust. So that's the way I tend to see it.
Yeah, no, that all sounds good. And I think that's kind of echoed in the chat here where, Andy was talking about your point around challenge and, how valuable that is actually to kind of sort of say, actually, you think this is the right course of action, but it's not. And that's kind of the valuable counsel you're providing. So that's great. And Patrick talks about, I think I'll just read this. He says, don't underestimate the genius level work done by paraplanners, interfacing with providers, sorting out snafus, etc. I don't use the word snafus enough. So yeah, I think there's a lot of appreciation here.
I would just say on that comment from Patrick, let's not forget the administrators. Because paraplanning is one thing, administration is another. No financial advice firm would work without good administrators. They are just as important as everybody else, and their skills tend to be the ones that actually make providers do what they need to do. So, big up for the administrators out there.
Yes, well said. Right, so we're kind of coming up to time, but I'm going to try and get in a couple more questions if I can. This isn't really a 2-minute answer, but Matthew wanted to know if you had any Excel tips because he would love to learn more.
Yes is easy answer. Probably email me, richard@paraplaners.com, because we've done some online stuff. We've got quite a bit of stuff we've done in the assembly, which I can send you to the videos and that kind of stuff. So yes is easy answer. Email me and I'll send you some links.
Yes, and see more. Okay, that's great. Thank you. And then I guess where I kind of wanted to end on, bar anybody else chipping in, was just around this whole piece around what a good relationship between planners and paraplanners actually looks like. So are there kind of examples that you can give, or things not to do, or kind of just advice around making that kind of dynamic work really well for both sides?
Yeah, I mean, at a very simple level, it works very well when it's a partnership. It doesn't work very well where there's a hierarchy. And that often means there's egos involved. And traditionally there's been, advisor, paraplanner down here. It doesn't work that way. We've all got our different skills, and you bring those together and you work kind of that way. It works very well. And all of the clients that we work with, we're partners together. We've got strengths when it comes to technical analysis and reporting. They've got strengths on kind of client relationships, and we work together as a team to get the best outcome. So if you're just looking for someone that's going to be a bit subordinate, you can just bark orders to, that relationship won't work very well for very long. It's coming together as partners that really makes the difference.
Yeah. And does it ever go the other way, like paraplanners having a superiority complex and going, I'm going to tell you how it's done?
Well, of course, my master plan is to have a paraplanning firm that employs a bunch of advisors, and we just send them out to see the clients, and we sort of run the whole show. That's
like when the robots take over, the paraplanners take over.
Yeah, the worm that turned. Well, it depends, how you conduct yourself. Anybody that's going to try and sort of just come up with something just to show how clever they are is not going to last very long. So it's about communication and collaboration. That's a big word for us. Collaborating together to get the best outcome.
Yeah, I think Sam puts it quite nicely here, with and not for. So that makes sense. Well, great. That was all the questions I had to ask. Was there anything else you wanted to kind of talk about before we all head off on our lunch breaks?
I don't think so. Just going back to the assembly, it's all done by the volunteers. If anybody out there would like to volunteer to get involved, or sat there thinking, wow, that looks great fun, can I get involved? Get in touch. There's room for plenty more. So come on in and join in the fun. And
they can just contact you to do that,
yeah? Definitely.
Perfect. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rich. That was really, really helpful. Thank you. I could talk to you all day, but we've run out of time. So thank you for saying yes and taking part. Thank you to everyone for kind of being so engaged on the chat and the questions. That's always really great from my end because I don't have to think up all the questions. So that's great. But it was lovely having you on. I know some of the guys said we should have done this ages ago. So glad to have got it under our belts now, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Very enjoyable. Thank you.
No worries. And then in terms of home games, I don't know who's next, but I'm sure I'll be told whether it's me or whether it's somebody else who's back hosting. But we'll let you all know who our next guests are, and then we all hope to see you again soon. But thanks for joining us.